Good afternoon, everyone. Well, Carpo is standing in front of the camera, talk for a few minutes about illusions and delusions, if you will. This is slightly inspired by a video that Logic Only Zone did earlier, but that wasn't really the reason why I made it. I just found it kind of coincidental that he made that one when I was on this mindset about numbers lately, and seeing patterns of numbers, seeing repeating patterns of numbers, namely 1111, 333, and 444. And over the last few years, I've done a lot of research into occult ideas and knowledge, as well as numerology, which is something I looked into a long time ago, but only, recently delved in a little bit more to kind of try to get a grasp on, I guess, whether all of this experience that we have, these signs that appear to come from nature, that appears that nature is telling us a story, may be all constructs of our own mind. Now, this is an important factor for me because over my life, I've always been the kind of person who gets really attached to an idea, or at least I used to. I still do to a lesser degree because I've learned to let them go, because I know that what I have to do is, if I get really excited about something that I discovered, let's say, whether it's something related to cymatics and frequency and the way that it interacts with the body, or the cells, or whether it's some sort of the terpenes and healing with medicines and plants, or even if it's just woodworking. I get really into something and I tend to get attached to it, and so when it comes to an idea that's unprovable, such as, let's say, numerology or numbers or intuition, some of these ones that I use, I'm going to use the example of intuition, synchronicities, and just general feeling in your heart of something greater. None of those are good enough to warrant being scientific evidence to prove that there's something beyond humans. So my point, before I go too far on this, is to say that there's no way to prove that we're any more than just flesh and blood at this point. We can speculate that we have something greater. We can speculate that we have this essence or a spirit or a soul, but none of it's provable at this point. And in a society that is scientifically motivated, that we needed a scientific basis for this. And I've been on the side that says, hey, some things you just can't prove, it is what it is. And I believed it. I've also been on the side that says, if you can't prove it, it doesn't exist. But generally I've been somewhere in the middle that says, hey, you either find comfort in some particular idea or you don't. It doesn't matter. Some people are happy to believe in a completely materialist world. But when I'm looking back at my life and the times when I was happiest, when was it? And it's always been during the times when I'm just living, when I'm not trying to prove anything, where I'm not trying to explain anything, where I'm not trying to pin anything down. And the most energized point in my life, where I felt the most chi, the most energy, the most whatever you want to call it, was when I was into Eastern mysticism. I did yoga a few times, but I couldn't stick with it. But various practices like that, chanting. I have a rosary, 44 beads on it, that I say a little something I'm thankful for each bead, things like that. And I've realized that by the experiences I've had with these ideas, that some of them can be so moving and so intense that you could be convinced that that's the truth. I mean, for me, I've tapped into various religions, ideas, and theories, and they all get me going the same way as, say, a Christian claims to have. I've had Christians confront me and say, you'll only feel complete if you do this, or if you take Jesus. And I say, but what about these other ideas? And unless they've experienced that, you can't explain it. But when you've done multiple experiences like that, had many Satoris or just moments of aha. You realize that it comes from just living and exploring, not from believing in a dogma or a particular, system. However, we still want to develop a system of beliefs because it makes it easier for us to live our lives. In other words, you can't just go along and say that there's nothing greater than us and be happy in my mind, because us as a whole is greater than us, if that makes sense. It comes along the lines with, you talk about psychic phenomenon, experiences people have and telepathy and whatnot. None of this is scientifically proven yet. In small doses, they've been able to scientifically show certain things, but they can't repeat it. And so it comes down to whether you believe it or you don't. For me, I believe in psychic phenomenon. That's something that I just have to believe in. Why? And a person might say it's all bogus. None of it's true. Maybe they're right. I have to entertain that notion. In fact, even when I've had arguments against Christianity, I've always said I have to leave at least a 0.01% chance that maybe Jesus Christ is the Savior and that that's the only way, the only salvation. Why do I have to leave that possibility? Because if I don't, I've already drawn conclusions that others are all incorrect, which is okay. But at the same time, you don't want to set yourself up to miss something. So I keep revisiting ideas. In other words, I use the Christian example because once in a while I'll revisit. Somebody will say, look at this book of the Bible, and I'll read it or check out the part they're sending me. I won't just cast it away and say, I've already looked into this. It's not true. I'm actually interested in these things, but I think it's called exegesis. It's the exploration of the Bible. There's 3 different ways to do it. But anyway, that was a video I was going to do next. So I just kind of tied that in there. But I guess what I'm trying to get to really here or convey is it okay for us to be deluded if it makes us happier? And that's a deep subject, because some people would say you're only going to be happy if you're completely rational with everything in life. Another person like me may say, but my rational mind tells me that there's something greater than me. And that sounds too floaty in the sense that I'm not talking about just saying, because that's a very old excuse to say, well, nothing could have just been here or appeared, so somebody must have created it, because I'm not a creationist. I guess to break it down, I believe that the universe is feeling itself out and evolving with us as one of its organs, components, parts, cells. It's all just one big aha. But finding a happiness is important in life. It's probably the most important thing. And for many people, finding that happiness means understanding that there is something greater. And it's my conclusion that will never be able to be proven empirically for all the people. In fact, I've said before, even if Jesus returned from heaven, floated down on a cloud, landing on the Washington, D.C. lawn and said, come on, let's rapture. Even the Christians wouldn't believe it was him. People just aren't prepared to believe something so extreme, at least not as prepared as they think they are. And I think that we just need to find something that works for us, so long as it's not harming anyone. But we have to be fair to ourselves and really think critically, because every time I critically analyze something I've thought in the past, and the reason why I'm doing this is because about a year ago I was doing videos about numbers, and I was seeing a lot of patterns of numbers, and this keeps recurring, but I was convinced that it was something greater. So I looked into it and I thought, okay, how does the mind really work? Am I looking at the clock at 11:11 every time just because of my mental clock that I have with the 24 hours, in the day? In other words, the subconscious mind is what's acting. It may not be something outside our mind. It may be the subconscious that's acting on all these things. And I have to, entertain that possibility. But really the point is, does it matter? Seeing things that are like so amazing and being like, aha, that's great. We don't have to always explain it away. But we want to. We really do. It's a human nature thing. So, I guess that's all I really got on that particular subject. Hope you all have a great day, and believe what you want to believe, right? We're never going to change everybody's mind to believe what we want them to believe, that's for sure. Boy, would that be a boring world if we did. Keep the excitement, keep the balance. Peace.